Hey everyone! In this video we are going to use a new cross-platform example project to explore some of the recent big improvements to StateSmith. There's a wiki page with all the details, but I'll give a quick overview now before we jump into the example project. The really big news is that we have drawio support. Everybody loves drawio these days, and that's because it's pretty awesome. We can even use it directly within VS Code with another awesome extension. And this kind of brings us to that point where users were asking for a single editor where they could do everything. And we have that now. Another really big improvement is adding support for C# scripts. Compare the old workflow on the left with the new one on the right. The old workflow had an extra directory and a fair number of files. The new workflow has just a single state machine design file, which is an image, and a single tiny script, as shown here. That update page also talks about new support for user modding of state machines, diagram-based RenderConfig, prefix modding for large state machines, history states, pseudo-states, and more. Let's jump into it. Head to the StateSmith example drawio1 repo, and let's download it. So grab that zip, extract it somewhere, and once you've got that extracted, open this directory with VS Code. Yes, I trust the authors. That's so we can run scripts and stuff. We'll close the welcome page, head to the README. Quick tip for people who are maybe not as used to using VS Code, if you're browsing a markdown file, press Ctrl-Shift-V to bring up the preview. This example project will work on Linux, Windows, should work on Mac. If you use a Mac and it works for you, please let me know. Yeah, sorry, I'm rambly. I'm not a professional screencaster or whatever, but I do love state machines and I want to share this. So bear with me here. Okay, the install instructions are very simple. All you got to do is follow this wiki page. Once you've installed .NET by following this link, well, let's close this here. It's super easy to install .NET script. You just run that on the command line and you're done. For this project, an example, and workflow, we also want to install the drawio VS Code extension. Yeah, it's got a lot of installs, a lot of amazing reviews. It's great. I'm unaffiliated with him, but if you want to throw some money his way, his GitHub repo, he's got a sponsor me page on there. He's pretty great. The next part is we're going to get IntelliSense working for our C# scripts. All you do is install the official C# package for VS Code. Way more installs, so not as good of a review, but some of these are hilarious. I have to use this in class, and I hate school, so that means this is bad. Copy these commands. I'm going to type Control and then backtick to get to my terminal, and I've shoved it over to the side for this example, but I'm just going to paste those two commands in there, and what it's going to do, and this is documented on the StateSmith wiki, but mainly, it created this OmniSharp file here, which figures out which version of .NET you have installed, and it also updates this launch.json file, but it already exists. We've already got that set up in our project here, so we're good to go. We don't have to worry about that. And then just because the scaffolding, they call it, for this .NET script init command has to create a file, we give it this delete me dummy file and then immediately delete that dummy file. And I keep on saying one last step, sorry. There is another step. You can either restart VS Code now that this file omnisharp.json has been created, or you can go Ctrl-Shift-P to bring up our command palette and hit restart omnisharp. Now let's actually go and look to see if we can browse this, our C# code. I'm going to close my terminal, Control backtick again. There it goes. So let's open up our source directory here. And I know we'll get to the diagram in a second here, but I just want to make sure we get our C# script working. And it looks like we do not have IntelliSense yet. And don't worry, there's another fix for that, and it is documented in the wiki. Because in this whole directory, there's a solution file here. OmniSharp is trying to pick up C# stuff in here. And so all we got to do is go Control-Shift-P again, OmniSharp, select project, Right now you can see that it's using the Windows MSVC project. We don't want that. We want the CSX, the C# script files. So click that, count to 7 or something like that, and we should see the IntelliSense change colors. Well, there's one change, and in a second we should have, there we go, we've got our IntelliSense. So now we can do stuff like all the regular stuff you would expect. If you hit F5, because we've got our VS Code launch here, so we can go run and debug. We're going to debug StateSmith CodeGen. So yeah, if you hit F5 or just click that button, we will see it do our CodeGen. I don't know what this is about. Failed to read environmental variable. Yep, I don't know. If you know, let me know. But yeah, so that's what we should see there. Now I think it's time to actually take a look at the diagram. So I'm going to close this again, control backtick twice. We're going to go to our Explorer here and take a look at our files. Now in this example project we have a StateSmith drawio plugin, and you can look at this. It's all open source. You can modify it. You know, feel free, obviously. And the reason why that's going to get loaded up when we open this drawio file is in the settings page. You basically just have to add this to your project. And again, it's in the wiki, but just bring it to your attention now so you can see. You can put this plugin wherever you want, as long as you update that path. Okay, and now I will stop stalling and we'll just jump right to the SVG. So if we click on this, we get this message at the bottom, found unknown plugin. So the drawio extension, because of that setting, is trying to load our StateSmith drawio plugin. You only have to do this once, typically per project. So click allow, and if we close it again and open it back up again, yeah, we're good to go. It's now trusted. And I'm going to click on this so we get a little bit more space over here. You can go full screen. You can bring in both tabs. You know, it is drawio with a couple added features. And let's just make sure that we can run everything. If you're on Windows, open the Windows MSVC project, right-click on your solution file, open with probably your later one. And this project was created with a very old version of Visual Studio 2017. So it should ask me if I want to retarget. I'm going to try to build, Control-Shift-B to build. So it says it's wrong, so we're going to retarget it, retarget the project, and grab whatever one you have installed. That should be fine. Control-Shift-B, again, to build. You'll notice that there's a build step that's been added to the project where it runs StateSmith as well. So now you can either debug it or run it normally. I'm going to run it normally for now. And yeah, so running regular Windows Visual Studio, you can run through the same exact stuff. Alright, back to VS Code. To learn how to use this plugin and drawio for drawing state machines, we're going to start from scratch. Drag in a new state machine. We'll add some color to it, just to make it not so boring. And then we could move stuff around in here, whoops, like this, but often I find it easier to actually jump into the group. So I'm going to double click on there, and now it's easier to select states without accidentally selecting their parents. So we're going to basically recreate what was there before. We'll rename this off, and then for our enter code here, we're going to go light off. And then if I hit enter, it gives me a new line. If I hold control and hit enter, it ends my editing. I'm going to drag this to make it a little smaller. And we can bring that over to get it in line. And yeah, let's start adding our on states. So if we add on one, we're going to copy this. When you're trying to select a label, it's often easier to click it once, select it, and then double click to grab it. If you're having trouble selecting this text here, you can always select it and hit F2 instead of trying to double click. We're going to change that event handler text to light on one, control enter. And we'll drag these in here, line them up a little bit. Oh, come on, man. There we go. And let's add some color to it. I think that one, yeah, I don't know, one of these looks good enough. And here's one of the, small but nice things about our plugin with drawio. When we want to add on to, we click on here, it remembers our styling, and then the plugin adds on to. We're going to add on 3 as well, and it renames them all. I know it's a really small thing, but it's kind of nice. I like it. It's better than having to rename absolutely everything. We'll update our event handlers here. So this is going to be on to, F2 to get to there. Move my mouse out of the way. We've got on 3. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, make it a bit easier to work with. I'm going to leave these centered for the increase events. When you're running the demo, that's when you type I. And let's start adding our dim events. Now I've drawn that new edge or transition. I can either hit F2 to edit the label, but because it's selected, I can already just type dim. So that one's good to go. And I might grab these and make them a little bit wider, just so they spread out. Or I can move my increase label over a bit here. One thing to note is, you see how it turns green here? You can lock onto there like this, and everything's going to be fine like that. So you don't have to snap onto these specific points. I think you have to snap onto those points when you're drawing from it though. Like this one here, I can't just drag this wherever I want. It has to start from one of those points, so it has to originate from there. Yeah, if you know a way to improve that shape, let me know. Be interested for sure. So without doing anything, I'm just going to type increase. Let's get our dim going again. Okay, and we'll zoom out a little bit. So we've got, we need to add our increase here as well. Let's add our dim back. And we'll move this over just to make it look a little nicer. Okay, so now we should be good to go. Or at least to simulate. We've got our light on 1, on 2, on 3. We're going to hit the home button and hit save. Sometimes you have to hit save twice, or Control S, Control S. Or you should come back out to the home, or like to the very root before you save. There's an issue that I've got logged in the StateSmith plugin that has an upstream cause in drawio's code itself, where if you're inside of another group and then you save your file, it gets a little bit weird. So come up to the top and hit save. We're going to close those. So we're going to go full screen so we can see what we're doing here. If you're on Windows, you can follow along using Visual Studio, or you can use WSL like I'm using here. Anyways, we're going to run this from here for the rest of the tutorial because it's a lot nicer. It's very convenient to run it this way. We can see the state machine and run our terminal at the same time. Anyways, rebuild, run. We're going to see it give us a little StateSmith printing message, and then we compile with GCC and it gives us some instructions. So to send an increase event, we type I. To send a dim event, we type D and enter, and then O for off. We're going to hit enter for now. So let's type I. We see that we're in on 1. The light bulb kind of changed a little bit. Let's hit D to dim. We went to off. All right, let's walk all the way up to on 3. And there we are. And then we're going to hit dim. Again, looks good. So how are we going to add our off event now? I'm going to exit out of this, or at least stop running that. We could, if we wanted to, and I'm going to jump into the state machine again, we could draw a transition from on 1, on 2, on 3, all to off, like this. But because we're using hierarchical state machines, we can make this a lot cleaner. Instead of doing all 3 of those, we're going to undo both of those. And here's another feature that is only available in the plugin is grouping things into an actual state. So if you're inside of a state machine and you go Control-G, it adds a new state for you. If you were in just regular drawio and you do that, you get this invisible group, which is okay, but kind of a pain in the butt when you're drawing state machines. Let's color this too, because it just seems kind of crazy not to have it colored the same. We'll change the state name into this. We'll press F2 to onGroup. And because this is a hierarchical state machine, let's go straight from here back to there and type off. So with that one little edge there, if I'm in on1, on2, or on3, and I send the off event, it will transition back up to there. So let's try that out here. We'll rebuild and run. Uh-oh. We run into a problem here. So child outside of parent group. It's saying that diagram node with ID 216 and 196, this child on group is outside of its parent state machine. And this is something that is caused by drawio, and so I'll explain it in a second, but if you ever get lost and try to figure out what this ID is or where you find that out, you can go to Extras, Edit Diagram, and you can copy paste this to somewhere else, but you can find all the IDs right in here. This is the raw XML. So if you were to look for 216, there it is. That's our on group. Anyway, this can be helpful to sometimes resolve conflicts if you have them. The reason why this is happening is normally drawio isn't very powerful or useful working with nested shapes, so we have to add functionality to drawio with our plugin. And what happens when you exit back out to home or exit out of a group, our plugin automatically resizes all the parents all the way up to make sure that they fit their children. So by hitting exit, heading back to home, now if we save and run it again, it's resized the state machine to contain its parent, contain all its children, and it should work fine. There we go, back to normal. Yeah, so I don't want to dwell on that too long, but the reason why that feature is in there is because drawio will happily allow you to do stuff like this, where the state machine, if we got rid of this here, you could draw something in regular drawio where it looks like on3 is not part of this group, but if you drag it, you can tell that they are. And so that's why, we'll save this again, that's why that detection is built into StateSmith. It says, actually it found this other problem here. Off there has an edge without a source. And there's the diagram ID, the label, just to help you find it a little bit faster. Eventually, all of this will be hopefully built into our plugin, so it'll just highlight it and say, yo, that's the problem area, please delete it. Right, so if we delete that edge, save it again, and run it, here's where we say, yeah, child outside of parent grouping. So on3 is outside of the state machine. And the quickest way to fix that is jump into your state machine, jump back out, and our plugin automatically resizes it. Save it. I don't know why you have to hit that twice. It's part of the VS Code integration, I think. And back to normal. Okay. We've got pretty strong, or I guess pretty healthy undo support in here, so we can just keep going back. One of the things that I should mention too is if you want to delete something, a state like this one here, if you just hit regular delete, like this, it leaves all the edges hanging. If you really want to delete that and all the edges, hold Control when you hit delete, and it wipes them all out. So one other feature that's new and it's in that update wiki is this RenderConfig part here. Before, if you wanted to change what ended up in your generated files, like to customize them for includes or documentation or whatever you wanted, you would have to do that from the C# script file or project file or however you're running the StateSmith library. Now you can do it from this RenderConfig part. So if you double click into here, we're going to look at hFileTop for now first. And if we go, we can edit this, so we'll say, I like turtles, ... I don't know why I do all the ... dots. Anyway, we're going to save and hit F5 to run our code gen. And here we go. I like turtles. Now, because I've kind of zoomed everything in, it's a little bit hard to get back to my buttons, but this is a handy one. We're going to exit our group with that one. Same thing you can do with our file top. The file includes here. That's where we see this user RenderConfig, user RenderConfig h file includes text. That comes from here. And you would normally do something like some lib.h. We'll save, hit F5 to run it again, and we should see this updated there. Okay, we're going to undo that just because otherwise GCC is going to get mad at us when we try to run it again. But yeah, so that's pretty handy. And then when it comes time to defining variables, like we have this one variable down here, count. You used to have to do that in 2 steps. You used to have to define your variable and then create an expansion for it so that you could access it properly. Now we can do that all in one step. So if we double click in here, go to the top, auto expanded vars, we're going to double click into there. Now it's just one line. You say, here's my type, uint8 count, and it's going to create an expansion for us at the same time. So we can also add comments in here too. So anything you want to say, counting is good, question mark. Save, run F5, and bang, it pops up there. You can put as many comments as you want in there. One thing that is pretty cool, we haven't looked at our C# script file. And if you enable code linking at the bottom, this is a drawio extension feature, you can double click on here to jump directly to your C# script file, the expansions part, because of that little, the formatting basically. If it sees, what is that, octothorpe or the hash symbol and then my expansions, and then you double click on that, it'll take you right there, bang. So there's my expansions. I know it's small, but it's pretty cool. So you could, if you were working like this and you wanted to add a new expansion or something like that, just double click on my expansions and boom, it takes you right there. Now to close off this video, I'm going to show you a sneak peek of what the next video is going to cover. And that is adding custom behaviors based off of these modding or modification annotations. And basically what's happening here is in your script, so not part of StateSmith, we've added a couple lines of code here, which, like in between creating our runner with our diagram and actually running it, we add these 2 little functions, add recursive logging and add simple logging. So let's say you have an interest or a requirement to log when you transition to states. You could do that by going something like log entered beverage, and then copy that, change it for exited, and then remember not to do or forget the copy paste error of just leaving it as entered. Anyways, this adds a fair amount of noise, and if you add this everywhere, your diagram starts to get bigger and bigger, but really we can do this a lot simpler. Alright, so I brought up the generated code on this side here, and you can see that the water state isn't logged right now. So we'll paste it in there, we'll hit F5, and we'll see the enter and exit handlers get modified. That's basically it. Alright, well, thank you very much for watching, and if you're interested in learning more about how StateSmith works, check out our wiki.